You see, then I slam your face into the cake. It's comedy gold. I say we go for it.
Fine, but you're writing the script on that one. Next on the agenda is Sly Cooper month video. We kind of put that one late last year, so I say we do Sly Cooper Trivia Part 2.
This shouldn't be too hard to find more trivia on Sly 4. It's a relatively new game still.
Crap, I forgot. That means I have to play that game.
What's wrong with that?
Dude, it's the worst in the series.
No, it's better than the first.
Bullshit, I can argue it's the worst.
I still think it's still better than the second.
Take that back.
Fine, but it's still better than the first.
What's up everybody, Jose here, and if you haven't guessed, we're going to be doing some debates in this video and let you guys choose the winner. Now this isn't going to become a regular thing. It's not going to become a series. Me and Sides have legitimately argued about this before. Also, real quick, we're not saying the entire series is shit. It's actually really good. We're just arguing on our least favorite. Also, let it be known that these arguments contain spoilers, and it's best if you play the game to understand them. Without further ado, let's see who goes first. Evens or odds?
I'll take even.
I'll take odds.
Welcome everyone to the good part of this video, where I will be explaining to you how the final game in the Sly Cooper series, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, is better than the first game. Now, let's take a step back for a second, and I will admit that yes, it is not the best game in the series. That's not what I'm trying to prove. I am trying to prove that it is better than the first game. The third game, for me, is the best. We're not here to talk about that. Second, still better than the fourth. But I say that the last game, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, is better than the first Sly Cooper game. And there are a few reasons why. The first thing that I noticed why people do not like the fourth game is the long load times. Now, that is a problem that almost every game of this magnitude in this time has. This game came out in 2013. Games of this size in 2013 had long load times. That's just a thing. The motion controls, I mean, that it was only like, there's very few amount of missions that had the motion controls, and that was one of the criticized things that critics had on this game. There were only like 2 or 3 missions that you had to use the motion controls, and it actually, I thought, I liked them. You know, it was natural. You just move the controller a little bit, hold it flat, whatever. You know, if you don't like it, that's for you to not like. Also, a lot of fans dislike the fourth game because it was made by a different development group. Now, the original developers of the game pretty much weren't going to ever make another Sly Cooper game. And so they sold the rights to Send Zero Games, and Send Zero Games, what they did is they re-released the first 3 games in an HD re-release to raise money to build the new Sly Cooper game. Now that, to me, is pretty smart. You can't really fault them for doing that. No one does really, but the HD re-releases are a little because they have to be emulated, and you know, emulation isn't the best. But with people not liking the last game because it was made by Send Zero Games, I'm like, okay, well that could be a valid argument. Now I say I don't like the first game. See, my problem with the first game is I didn't play the first game first. I started with the second, then moved to the third, and I didn't get to play the first game until after I had already played the fourth game. So that for me, I guess, maybe is a bit of a mistake. But a lot of people defend the first game because it was the first game. You know, I mean, oh, it's the first game. It didn't have all the features, but, you know, it started the series, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you're going to give the first game a break for it being the first game and not being the best looking just because it's the first and it started the series and whatever, I say if you're going to give it that break, then you have to give a similar break for the new game made by a different developer. You see, like, I can draw the parallels here for you. Watch. If you let the first game have a slide on it being the first game, then you let it slide on the old graphics. You let it slide on not having all the features that everyone loves about the rest of the series, and the gameplay elements that aren't there because it's the first game. And it actually looks a little off-putting. I mean, let's throw up a couple of character models here, and they kind of scare me a little bit. But with those, then you also have to allow for the game not being developed by the original developers, because I'm sure the original developers had their say and was like, oh, this is what we were going to kind of do, but we didn't do it. So they were like, oh, let's take that story in a different direction. but I don't think it went in any other direction that it really couldn't have gone in. Like, if you take into account the end of the third game, realistically, all anyone had to work with of what was the next game going to be was that Bentley says he's making a time machine and time will tell, blah, blah, blah. If you see the parallel there of giving one game a break and not giving another game a break for a similar set of circumstances, because like this game was the first Sly Cooper game the other group produced. Well, I guess unless you count the HD re-releases, but that doesn't count as developing a new game. So if you don't want to give this game the break of being made by a different company, then you don't give the first game a break by being made as the first game. Now, playing the first game, or any of the other games for that matter, Sly's ancestors are very, very built up as, these amazing people. Every time anything is referred to in the Thievius Raccoonus, it's like, look at my ancestors, the way they did this, and now I do this. And in the third game, when you go through that vault, the entire time Cooper's just like,
Sir Gallant of the Knights of the Cooper Order, honorable knight and cunning thief.
Well, in the fourth game, you get to meet those ancestors, and you get to play as them. And people think, oh, well, they're just Sly copies. I'm like, of course they're Sly copies. They're basically Sly in a previous life. I mean, what did you expect them to be? They're not going to be terribly different than what he already is. You know what I mean? Like, how I don't see the people's thinking of, that's not fun because it's just a copy of Sly with a different power. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what his ancestors are. That's who they are. They all look the same, don't they? You knew that from the other games. Why is that not the logical progression that they would just be the same person almost, except they are more advanced in their field of Cooperness? You know what I'm saying? So basically, a lot of people don't like Sly 4. I really, really enjoyed it. The problem I have is people who like the first game just because it's the first game. Why does any game deserve that kind of break? Now, I'm not saying the first game is horrible. It's actually a good game. But all I aim to show you is that the first game is worse than the fourth game. Therefore, the fourth game being a better game. It's a longer game. It's filled with a lot more actual gameplay. There's an actual, I feel a larger variety. In the first game, you only played as Sly, and it was realistically only like platformy sections with a bit of stealth added on top of it. And then there was the time where you raced as Murray in these really, really bullshit races. Like, look at this stuff right here. Look at this. Look how hard this is to fucking do. Look at that. There's no rubber banding in those races. Those races are horrible. They are garbage. You have to be 100. You have to be perfect. Otherwise, there's no point. So, sure, after playing the game a few times, you might be pretty good at it. But the first time I played those races, I remember sitting there just going around the same track like 10, 15 times, spending like 2 hours on this one race, when in the other games it takes about 2 hours to complete an entire level. So you might have made that one little gameplay element a little too hard, don't you think, maybe? Also, one thing I like to point out, Murray is a little bitch in this game. I mean, granted, in the second game, third game, and fourth game, he is the Murray. Problem with that is, they never really explain how he just becomes the Murray. He's just amazing in the second game, and then in the first game, he doesn't punch nobody. That's his thing. He just drives his car, which is interesting. So I leave it up to you guys to decide that the fourth game is better.
Where to begin? Okay, I like Sly 4. Graphically, it looks great. The characters still have that great cel-shaded look, along with minor details that make them pop and stand out. The 2D cartoonish cutscenes still work very well with the 3D graphics. The levels all look amazing, it has great controls, the music is also wonderful. That's about where my praises stop. The main reason why Sly 4 is bad is that it's a disappointment. Let's take a look at Sly 3 real quick. Developer Sucker Punch Productions created an epic adventure about putting a master crew together to pull off an impossible heist. As Sly, you journey throughout the world recruiting thieves who are masters at their craft, all the while taking down some of the most heinous villains in the series. At the end, Sly and his team were able to pull off the heist somewhat successfully. The entire team disbanded, with each member pursuing different paths. Sly left the team to be with Carmelita after catching a deadly case of amnesia. Or did he? This was a pretty good way to end. Sly decided to leave the thief life to be with the one he loved. They left the game with a satisfying ending, but at the same time left it open enough to continue if they wanted to. The next game had to be quite a follow-up, and GuardianGamers thought they could do it. They worked on the HD collection and felt they had a good feel for Sly and where the series could go. While they tried, it just didn't live up to the expectations, and review score complement this, with Sly 4 being the lowest rated game in the entire series. Why, you may ask? Well, it kinda took one step forward and took 2 steps back. Sly went from having an entire team, all who had different playstyles, to joining up with his ancestors who generally play like Sly. While Sly's team grew throughout the story, teammates had certain missions in their specific stage, and onward. Sly's ancestors really just got switched out whenever a new era of time was visited. Plot-wise, it was also a little weak with the entire game being about saving your family lineage. It didn't feel as epic as breaking into a vault. I will say the developers had quite a challenge, since Sly 3 referenced the belief of time traveling in its next game with its ending. Some of the characters also change. Penelope, Bentley's love interest in the third game, wasn't necessarily a villain when you first met her. She just wanted to fly in an airplane dogfighting competition, so she made a false persona who just seemed evil. She had feelings for Sly at first, but came to love Bentley and even saved his life. In the fourth game, she changed and saw Bentley as weak for doing things for friendship. Meanwhile, she just wanted to create and do stuff for money. It didn't really go that well with fans. Character change isn't new, but it helps when some character development is shown. Murray started pretty much as a weak fraidy cat in the first Sly, but showed some bravery by the end, and that led him to becoming the Murray in the second. Penelope sorta just happened. Speaking of characters, the main villain in Sly 4, Le Paradox, is a lame copycat of the first 2 games' villain, Clockwork. Both are jealous of the Cooper clan, both stalk them throughout time, and both kidnap Carmelita as bait for Sly. Though Clockwork is just more formidable and evil. He actually followed the Cooper family through time thanks to a metal body and a lot of hate, which made him immortal, while Le Paradox actually just time traveled and had his own lackeys take care of the Cooper clan. Clockwork also died, but his body was the main driving force in Sly 2, while Le Paradox stinks. Literally. Gameplay wise, Sly 4 is also more repetitive with minigames than the other entries. Bentley's section had the same 3 minigames with some minor platforming in between. What happened to collecting Mojo minigame, the safe cracking minigame, the platforming of train robbing or demolition of a disco ball? There was a little bit more variety in the previous games. The other games also made the most use of their stages. Sly 4 had large stages that were there just to show how beautiful the graphics were and hide collectibles. Sly 2 also had collectibles hidden in the stage, but they were smaller and used to the best of its ability. For example, episode 3 and 4 of Sly 2 had most of their missions take place in the actual stage itself. All of the games had instances where gameplay was taken in a specific building or area. Usually, there's quick loading time between the levels and the minigames. Except for Sly 4. Sly 4 had longer loading times than any of the previous games. According to the footage I recorded, the first episode of Sly 1, which had 8 missions along with collectibles, took me about an hour to complete. Sly's 2 first episode, which had 11 missions along with collectibles, took me about an hour 15. Sly 3's first episode only had 9 missions, no collectibles, and it took me about 1 hour 15 minutes, plus another 10 to 20 minutes just for the challenges. Just finishing the first episode of Sly 4 with 8 missions took me about 2 hours, and most of that was just due to loading times. Like I said, Sly 4 wasn't bad, but it was just disappointing. You're probably asking yourself, well, what makes Sly 1 better? Well, it was the stepping stone for what led to a great series. Sly 1 introduced the cel-shaded 3D models and 2D cutscenes that would become a series staple. Compare it to Jet Set Radio Future or GTA 3, and it still doesn't look bad. It actually holds up. The main characters were great in the first game, each showing their personality with well-written dialogue, and like I said, the first game had a badass villain who would haunt the team in the direct sequel. Though most importantly, it introduced the key gameplay of what the Sly Cooper series is all about. Great platforming. It's all about perfecting your jumps, climbing, avoiding enemies at times. In all of the entries, a good portion of Sly's mission involved platforming. Sly's 1 time travels and some of Sly 3's challenges were about perfecting platforming skills. In the goal of becoming a good platformer, the Sly Cooper series hit the mark, especially with the first. Sly 1 not only had great and challenging levels, but strong and responsive controls as well. Of course, over time, gameplay and graphics evolve, but you can't start without a good foundation. You can't dock any points off Sly 1 just because it's the first. That's like saying the original Mario Kart is bad just because it doesn't look as great or have any new gameplay elements as the new Mario Kart game. We have to look at games with some remembrance of the time, and that's all I have to say. Alright, it's now time to vote. Who made the better argument for the better game? We'll be using YouTube's new poll cards, which you can find by clicking this icon that should be here. First time we really use it. We'll say the winner sometime in the future. We'll let you know on our Twitter. Our social media links are in the description below. If you like what you saw, you can always subscribe to us or check out our other videos that are on the screen. We got a review of a game called Avery Attorney and a video where we talk about 7 games coming out later this year that we can't wait for. Thanks for watching, everybody.